My name's Rodney Haregrove. I'm a full-time fishing guide at Big Bear Resort on Kentucky Lake, and we're going to talk bass fishing today. Kentucky Lake's 187 miles long from Kentucky Dam down to Pickwick Lock. On the north end of Kentucky Lake, it's about 2 miles wide. And we're going to start out in early spring when the water temperature is about 50 degrees. And we like to fish main lake, creek channel banks, anywhere you can be in 10 or 12 foot of water and still reach the bank. And probably the best bait that time of the year when the waters are in the low 50s or just reaching 50 is a suspending jerk bait. And this is one of my favorites in a sexy shad. And you just twitch it really slow, lots of pauses, lots of holding in between jerks, and catch a lot of big bass this time of the year. Another good bait is an Alabama rig. And basically it's got some swim baits on it. It looks like a bait fish group. Right now, Kentucky Lake will only let you have 3 hooks. I've got 4 baits on here, but one is just a dummy. It doesn't have a hook on it. And normally, of all the baits, they'll get the back hook, the one that's the furthest back. And I'll usually make it a different color, and it seems to catch more fish than all of them. I've caught 3 fish at one time on it before, but normally that back bait gets most of the fish. And when the water starts warming up, the fish will start moving back to the main lake points and secondary points and creek channel banks in the main lake and back in the bays. So then we are still using the jerk bait on some of those points and deep creek channel banks. But as the water starts warming up, this rattle trap really comes into play. And you throw it right up on the bank and you do little hops with it. I let it go to the bottom and then I'll jerk it up and let it go back to the bottom. And I love this time of the year, right now the water's really muddy, so we use a brighter crawfish color. Red shad's really popular this time of the year. But there's several different types of rattle traps. There's been copies made, but the rattle trap, the original, 1/2 ounce, is what I throw a lot of times. And then there's a Lucky Craft LV that's a really good bait. They both have rattles in them. Cover a lot of water with that rattle trap. A shad rap's a good standby when the fish are back in the bays on the main lake points and also the creek channel banks. And the shad rap, we weight it so it goes down about 4 or 5 foot and suspends. And you really fish them really slow. You reel them down and stop, and they just kind of sit there and waver like the jerk bait. But that's been a really good bait over the years. Once you do find some fish on a deeper bank, you can move on to a slower moving bait, a jig and a trailer. I got one tied in over here. It's probably my favorite color. It's a peanut butter and jelly is what they call it. And I use a pack-a-crawl trailer. And you just drag it really slow and go through brush and around docks. You can swim it by docks. It's a really good bait to swim also. When the water temperature gets up to about 60 degrees, they'll move way back in the bays and start to look for places to spawn, and they'll move back into the pockets that are protected from the wind. And then you're flipping and throwing a spinner bait. And this is a really good bait that time of the year, is a chatterbait. And it's got a blade on it, and you put a trailer on it just like a jig that I had. You put a little jig trailer like this on the back of it, or you can put a twin tail on the back of it. But you basically just throw this and wind it. And you can determine the depths by how fast you fish it. You can let it go back to the bottom and swim it a little bit and let it go back to the bottom. But that's a really good bait that's caught hundreds and hundreds of fish on Kentucky Lake. When you come down to Kentucky Lake, give me a holler. My name's Rodney Haregrove. I run the guide service at Big Bear Resort, and I'll be glad to point you in the right direction and get you going catching largemouth on Kentucky Lake.